Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis, and we are so excited for today's episode. And before we jump into our coach, I just want to give a special shout out to Lou's Deli in Lowell. We visited there last week. Andy, one of the co-owners, was a really good guy, made some great sandwiches. We tried the Tony Soprano, and it was as advertised. It was even better than I thought it could be. Tony's the man at Baseline, so having a sandwich after you is awesome too. So it was a great spot, super reasonably priced. And as I said, Andy was awesome and treated us with a lot of kindness and respect. So it was great time, great for everybody. And I just wanted to give them a shout out. We're going to jump into our coach today. And I'm really excited. I've heard a lot about this coach. I'm from the Medford area, as a lot of you guys know. I've heard about this coach for quite a while since being at the school and, all the great things he's done and how involved he is with the community. So it was awesome to be able to reach out to him and have him agree to come on here and talk with us a little bit. So the head football coach at Tufts University, ladies and gentlemen, Jay Civetti.
Andy, thanks for having me, and hopefully next time I can get up to Lowell with you because that sandwich sounds pretty amazing. So we need to make a regular post-game show up there. So
I loved it. I tell you, we're trying to find the best spots to go after a game or go before a great game to grab something to eat before you see a football game or a basketball game at that high school level. And
sure,
that's a good spot, man. It's a really good spot. So it'll be, for people who haven't tried it, you gotta take the trip up to Lowell. It's awesome.
Cool. Absolutely.
Coach, we're really glad we have you on here today. And as I said, you come as advertised. I've heard a lot of great things about you over the years, and really it's an honor to have you on here. So I'm just going to kind of jump into it. I know as a player, I love to give coaches their street cred where it's deserved a little bit as a player. And I looked up some information on you, and, I have here that you played at Trinity. You started 32 games, and you were one of the best linemen in the NASCAC your senior year. To start 32 games, it means that A, you're pretty good, B, you're pretty smart, and pretty tough guy. So, I want to give you your street cred there that you deserve.
Well, I look, I got probably a bunch of buddies that are gonna get on me for this one. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That was a long time ago. I was really lucky to play for some great coaches at a great university, college that I proud of my time there. I had some awesome teammates, and be able to be a guy from Trinity is something I take a great deal of pride in, except for one day during the year. So
when you play them, I get it.
It's the only time, but and that's not even true because I'm very proud of my university. So
that's cool. That's a great story. So I'll jump into it. Obviously, you love football. You're very involved that you play at a high level. You played a good conference at a very good school academically as well. So you're a pretty smart guy. I mean, talk about when you knew that maybe, okay, when I hang up the pads, I kind of want to jump to the other side a little bit and really get involved in the game from the coaching aspect.
Yeah. I think I always loved, coaching was in my blood. My mom coached high school sports for 20 plus years. Came from a family of coaches, at, aunts and uncles as well that had been involved in athletics. I actually, coming out of Trinity, I had a job in the IT sales consulting world. I have a brother who's 8 years younger than me, and he was a freshman at Wellesley High School. And I came home, was supposed to start my job after graduation, and they had a captain's practice that I went over to. And I was out in that field, and just something clicked. It was a real connection. It was something that I knew that I really wanted to do. So I had reached out to the group that had hired me and said, "Hey, look, I'm not in this thing 100%, and I don't want to do anything that I'm not 100% into." So, ironically, the guy that hired me was a guy I looked up to, who played football at Holy Cross, and I played football with his brothers at Trinity. So, I think he understood, and he's been a huge supporter of me and everything I've done in football since. So, I'm certainly grateful for that time. He said, "If I'm going to make this choice, make sure I do it right." So, trying to hold him true to that. So that's really when it happened. I think probably all along I always knew I wanted to be a coach. I loved hanging around the coaches. I certainly love the intricacies of the game, and just the connection and the experience that you have with your coaches and your players is a unique one. And ultimately, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, there's so many of my coaches that I still keep in touch with that I see on such a personal level now that I'm, older and friendly with, and
Yeah.
I text with and talk to. And yeah, it is cool. You do build some sort of relationship in football. It's just a little bit different. Every sport has a relationship with their coaches. But there's something about football with the hours and the amount of time that you put into it and how much you're around the kids that, yeah, you just build these bonds and relationships with them. that seem to last, long beyond the game when it's over, so obviously part of, being a coach and the journey of coaching is that you take a lot of different jobs and you want to do a lot of different things because you learn from different people. Now, I know one person that you worked under was Tom O'Brien, at a time at BC and as well as NC State. And you worked, and when you were there, I mean, I'm just going to throw a name out there. Obviously, BC quarterback Matt Ryan, you were there during, his time at BC as well. I mean, I guess I'll ask you this question in two parts. One, talk about working under a guy like Tom O'Brien and what you learned so much from him. And second, like seeing a guy like Matt Ryan, I mean, elite quarterback at the college level that was bound for the NFL, first round draft pick. I mean, talk a little bit about, just your time there and what you learned under such a great coach and seeing some great players play.
Yeah, sure. BC was a special place in my life, and yeah, I was really lucky to be around guys like Matt. But there were a handful of guys. I mean, I think there was maybe 10, first day draft picks at the offensive line there, and a handful of other great guys. I think the thing I probably learned most from Coach O'Brien, he was a Naval Academy grad, Marine. Not a lot of frills to him. Very consistent in terms of his expectations. I think his commander's intent was very clear, and I think his military background, really carried through to our program. You knew what was expected. He was very clear and upfront about what those standards of excellence were, and I think he held you accountable to him, regardless of what your role was within the organization. So I think the thing that I've tried to emulate from my experience with Coach O'Brien is just trying to be really clear about what's expected and not try to micromanage, more so do the management in the explanation and in the support structure of what it is that you need you guys to do, whether it's your staff or your players. And that's something I really appreciated from learning from Coach O'Brien. He let his assistant coaches do their thing, and I think that in turn allowed us to have the success that we had there because he had great staff. He had really good coaches, good men, who knew what they were doing and weren't micromanaged. And I think at the end of the day, that was a huge byproduct of why we were successful. In addition, as we all know, X's and O's are one thing, but it comes down to the guys execute. When you got a guy like Matt Ryan, as unique as an individual as I've been around, still to this day, salt of the earth. It certainly has never gotten to his head. He's, as much as I'm sure he loves being one of the best, statistical quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. I bet you his number one thing that he loves is being a dad, and he was just always that kid from the day when we first met him and he came into camp as a recruit, and then when he came to preseason that following year, and that one of the cool things about BC and I think college football is you develop relationships with the family. Like Mike's dad, great group of people, great awesome guy. Was just someone who I always would find me at the end of a game, high five, before a game, high five. And none of us were surprised that Matt had the success that he's had and has done what he's done. So yeah, pretty cool to see him grow and become who he is today.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned one thing about, and just jumping back to Coach O'Brien for a second, not micromanaging his assistant coaches. I mean, I would say at that level, when guys are there, I mean, they're there, they're in it. They want to grow in it. They want to be great at it. So, letting your guys coach a little bit, knowing that they're at that highest level of college football and they want to continue to grow, letting your coaches coach. That's really cool to hear, even at that Division I level, that a lot of head coaches can be like that,
Yeah. I think, it fosters ownership, and, I think guys lean into it a little bit more when they know that they're being respected for what they were brought in to do, and that doesn't happen everywhere. My assumption is, at least in the places that I've been, which hasn't been that many, with Coach O'Brien, it was a direct correlation in terms of the success that we had, and the ability for our kids to execute, because there weren't a lot of voices. It was very clear and concrete. Here's what's expected. Here's how it's going to be done, and then we let them go play.
Yeah,
So
I mean, clear expectations, keep it simple, keep it easy, and yeah, I totally agree. And a really cool story just to tie in. I know we're going to jump into a minute your time at Tufts right now, but just the Tufts and NC State correlation. I mean, I thought something that was really cool was I heard after one of your seasons when Tufts, guys were over, you actually kind of jumped and helped out NC State with Coach OBrien in a bowl game. Just talk a little bit about that to the audience. I think that's a really
yeah,
cool story. Coaching D3, then boom, all of a sudden you're coaching D1 at a bowl game level. It's pretty cool.
yeah, it was kind of like one of those bittersweet experiences. So my mentor, Dana Bible, who was the offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, wide receiver coach um, at NC State at the time, he had really bad and tough bout with cancer, and the week prior they had played Virginia Tech, and coach was really not in a great place, and ultimately within hours after that game or during that game ended up in the hospital. Um, I don't remember how exactly everything worked. Our season had ended. There was a phone call or two from some people, and the next thing I know, Coach OBrien had been able to ask for a waiver for the NCAA to add a coach back in. I had GA'd for those guys for 6 years. So I think it was more just a byproduct. They were going to play Carolina, actually, which down there is like a bowl game. It's like a national championship game for NC State. Um, I think coach just wanted to make sure that we had everything that we needed without having to disrupt too much. Coach brought me down on, I think it was Sunday morning. I was there for meetings that day. Really, it was just kind of a continuation for what we had had from all the years prior. So,
Right.
really just paying my dues back to a group of guys that, had helped me get to where I was getting to. And, there was, it was pretty cool being able to go down there and go from coaching, some D3 guys and being able to have, Russell Wilson in your room and talking shop with them. And, really just being there is maybe moral support most of anything else.
I mean, I was like
But
trying to mathematically go backwards, and I was like, I was wondering if Russell Wilson was his quarterback. And then
yeah,
you just said that. I was
he
like,
was, he
wow.
was it. And it was awesome. And it was a great game. We won and we made it work. It was during Thanksgiving week. And one of the coolest things about all that, aside from just going, I'll be back and be a part of that win and be back with the guys that, that cut my teeth with. TOB, Coach OBrien surprised me on Thanksgiving, flew my wife down for Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh,
We had it with the team, so the lot of cool memories from that experience. And at the end of the day, the thing I'm most grateful for is, Coach Bob went on to continue his career, is healthy.
that's great.
He's retired now. He just retired from UCLA after this last year, but actually he and Russell have been training for this season. So, certainly happy at the end of that for the W, but more that coach coach got after cancer and beat it.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. That's great to hear. I'm glad that he did that. And
yeah,
yeah, what an amazing experience. I mean, Russell Wilson, that's cool. I didn't know that. And I wanted
yeah,
to ask, and then I was like, I'm not going to ask him during this. And then you said, I was like, thank God he
yeah.
said,
It was it
yeah,
was it was pretty cool. It was like, and he made this one pass. We ran this one play, and this kid Owen Spencer ran a post over the top, tight end running a base across, and it was like one of Russell's favorite plays versus quarters and the safety bit. And I saw you could just see it from upstairs, and he
yeah,
just let that thing launch, and he ran over to pick the phone. I'm like, man, I've been waiting to see that for a long time. Like I missed that because when I was there that first year GA, and he was redshirt, and so he was just terrorizing the defense as the scout team guy. So pretty cool to see it live. So
yeah, that is really cool. That is awesome.
yeah.
So and now I want to jump into Tufts a little bit. So I know, and we'll kind of weed through things a little bit. I know that you were the offensive coordinator there. You had a pretty good relationship with your head coach, and someone who's a pretty big mentor in your life. And obviously that coach steps down, and you're the next guy up. And I have a similar story with my mentor, someone who I played for and coached with for a long time, and stepping for, and those are huge shoes to step in for the person that you really look up to and like you idolize, and now you're stepping into their shoes. I mean, talk about that moment of
Yeah.
maybe taking over for somebody that just means a lot to you.
Yeah, that was an interesting time professionally and personally, and I think luckily, you know, uh, Coach Samko is now the offensive line coach at Bentley. I think he made sure that I learned how to do that. At the end of the day, he cared about Tufts football and the kids that were in it, so he wanted to make sure that the best could happen for those kids. Which is something I always look up to with him in that situation. And just kind of what was going on in his life and the decisions and the kind of course of what happened there. But it was an interesting time. I mean, again, had been the offensive coordinator there for 2 years, and then all of a sudden this opportunity arises, and it kind of happened in segments. I think originally I was put in charge of, there was no real title other than kind of making sure that the recruiting was going to go well. So we were just having recruiting conversations, and then that turned into me becoming the interim head coach. As we went through the spring, and then going into that first year, the decision was made 3/4 of the way through the season that I'd be the head coach there. So it was an interesting time. Right place, right time. I think that's really what ultimately comes down to, like most of the opportunities that we get in this profession. But certainly a trying one. Learned a lot about people and a lot about myself, and I'm not a big regretter, so I don't really look back and dwell on anything that I probably could have done better. But I probably know that there were a lot of good things that I did, and then there were a lot of mistakes that I made, and I think that's kind of part of
Learning, right?
life and learning, right? That's coaching, right? I mean, I probably got more losses up there than any of us do wins when it comes, if you really tallied everything up, not just scores. So yeah, a heck of an experience. Obviously grateful that I had that moment, and the end of the day, it's what we have become certainly grew out of the positives and negatives during that time.
Yeah.
It exposed a lot about the support of the program from a university standpoint. It brought people out of the woodwork, good and bad, that were supportive or frustrated with the situation. And none of us really had an idea that it would take as long as it did for us to turn it. But grateful that the opportunity arose, and that we've gotten it to where it is today.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are tremendous, and that's what I really wanted to ask you. As like a head coach, I take a look at myself when I was a head coach, and I was a better coordinator than head coach. I mean, I'll say it, and part of that is, you come out the gate, you struggle a little bit, and for me, it was that was a difficult part for me. We lost 6 games before we won our first one, and we lost some close games, and you look back, like you say, and you're like, oh my God, there's so many plays you wish you could take back, or moments in a game that you could take back that you just saw it kind of swing the other way a little bit. And, so I totally understand that, but maybe talk about, because I know you didn't have a lot of success right out the gate. And I think that that's a real good lesson for coaches out there to say, you have a plan, you have a program, you have something that you're sticking to, and you want to see it build. And good programs sometimes take that 3, 4, 5 years before it starts swinging. And personally, I think sometimes in sports, they don't give coaches enough time. It's such a short life of, what can you do for me in 2 or 3 years before they're reevaluating whether they want to keep you or they want to get rid of you? And it's a tough profession, and it can be scary for coaches and not knowing that. But, you went through a tough time, but then you flipped it around and you have a strong program. I got some numbers to back it up here that we'll say in a minute. But I mean, talk about that for coaches out there, of what you went through, you fought through it, and now you have a pretty tough, consistent program over the last 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, for the first experience, the first lesson from all of it is the age old adage, surround yourself with good people, right? I've been really lucky to have a staff of guys that have been there with me from the beginning. A few guys have actually left and come back, and but I think the consistency with the staff's been important. The support from the university has been amazing. President Monaco, has been incredibly supportive of our program. The alumni support has only increased. I've had 2 athletic directors during the job. Both have really helped instill a value system within our department that allows us to be successful. And ultimately, I mean, Tufts University certainly recruits itself, right? So,
right.
I think when you got a strong university, you got strong support systems. There is infrastructure that is either in place or then created. It allows you to have the success we've had. I've just been really blessed to be the person in charge during that time. But none of it would be done without all the other people that have been around it. Ultimately, our story was we were coming off a 1-7 season. when I became the head coach, named the head coach, I think we were 0-5 at the time, and I got named the head coach on Thursday before Amherst, and I think Amherst hung 40 on us that next weekend. I'm pretty positive that Coach Mills might have taken 3 knees on the 3-yard line so that he wouldn't run up the score. He and I have gone back and forth on that for years. My recommendation is if you're going against the team that is losing, and if they've got their starters, and just let them try to stop you. Don't the knees were worse. That was a
Right.
pretty
So,
low point
yeah.
in the day, and that's not a knock on EJ. I mean, again, that's one of those conversations as staffs I think that people should have. Like, how do you do it right? How do you finish a game in that situation? It's not one hopefully that you have to come across very often, but again, you talk about learning during your losing times. That was one of those ones that I put up there. Someday I'm going to be in this situation. How do we handle it? So
Right.
still waiting for that one, but it's coming. So that season we went 0-8. The following year we went 0-8, and the next year we went 0-8. So we went three state years. We had the longest active losing streak in the nation. And during that time, it was obviously as difficult a time in my life that I've had professionally and obviously personally too, right?
I can get it. Yeah.
With the type of investment that we've had, and I mean, the book someday will come out, and hopefully it'll pay for my daughters to go to college. But if anybody's interested at that point, so I appreciate your interest. Look, I will tell you this right now. There's no special parking space. There's no I don't know. I didn't have the Tony Soprano, so maybe that would have changed my luck. But there's no special meal. I've tried all the superstitions. None of them worked. I think going back to what you asked, it was sticking to who you wanted to be and making sure that you weren't giving up on the values and the core beliefs that you had, right? There were a lot of people with advice, and I think one year I probably listened too much. Another year I probably didn't listen enough. So I think in that realm, if people are reaching out to you, I think you just need to make sure that you're filtering the voices, right? Because too many voices could disrupt your focus. I really think it's really embracing the people that aren't that weren't skewed by what was happening, right? Our kids were still crushing it in the classroom, right? The chief of police wasn't calling me every night saying you got bad kids, right?
Right.
These were good kids, right? Good, smart, hardworking kids. It was important to them. That senior class, that ended up winning their first game of their college career and then never won another game. Has some really special people in it, right? To be able to stick that thing out,
Right.
and to be able to embrace what that experience was, certainly is a motivator for me, because those guys weren't giving up. I certainly sure as heck wasn't either, right? So, it was really this unique opportunity where you were recruiting and getting this excitement going from all these young kids, but you were really focused on these older kids of making sure that you were appreciative of what they were doing and day in and day out. And really after every game, I was like, guys, I know this is terrible. If this isn't for you, no hard feelings. I get it. Losing's the worst.
Yeah.
But respect the work of others and just get out of the way, and I think that we built confidence in that mindset. Where the change really happened is when we stopped worrying, waiting for the other shoe to drop, and we stopped looking at the scoreboard and, really just focused in on how we practiced during the week, how we took care of each other, how we were able to be coachable as players and also be critical as coaches, but know that intrinsically there was this relationship to just be better. That was it. And we
And
had
it's so important, and it's so important, and it's sometimes more important, like you said, than the X's and O's and all that stuff, because if you don't have a team that's together and a coaching staff that's together and is sticking together through that tough time, then nothing ever gets better,
Yeah. It was that's when I really learned and fell in love with is, building culture, and embracing culture and, pushing guys out of their comfort zone. Sure, during inside run drill, but, also in their relations with each other. Right. And that time also allowed us to tie a lot of the lessons from on the field and in the classroom to life, and being a good man. And, how are you going to handle a situation when you're, a father in this situation, or you're a husband, or whatever it is you choose to be, and that's something maybe if we had just hit the ground running and just started winning, I don't think I personally would have grown as much as I did during that time. And I certainly know that our kids and coaches wouldn't have done that either. So and I'm not trying to like make it silver lining, I mean, it stunk during that time. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was
Yeah,
pure misery.
I get it. I get it.
I mean, Mike Vega wrote an article in like the paper, like saying we were going to end the streak, just because like he's like, this has to end for you at some point. He wrote this great article, and that didn't work either. So I had Mike on the hook for a while on that one, but eventually it came down to it. September 20th, 2014. We ended it. I had made a tombstone down the street from my house as a tombstone maker, and I had him take a little tombstone and write 31 on it, because that was how many games we had lost, and we buried it on the visiting team sidelines, because my point to them was like, hey, it's just a number, and it's not our problem anymore. It's someone else's.
Yeah.
And if the other team wants to worry about it, let them. And we buried that thing. Every guy on the team dug the hole, put the brick in there, and every kid took the shovel and filled in the hole. And that shovel still gets carried around to this day. A freshman earns it as they go throughout by other guys that have had the shovel. Those traditions and those little things kind of grew out of those moments and experiences.
It's huge, dude. It's huge.
And
yeah.
That's stuff that you can't ever take away. You can't make that stuff up. Those are the things that just emerge. And as bad as some of those times were, it's those things that made it. I'd still get on the bus and to Hamilton in 2011 knowing what I know now. Like, as hard as I was, like,
Yeah.
Those guys, there was a kid, Tommy Mead. I mean, he ended up probably being the change agent for it, as I like to deem it. He hates when I say that, but local kid, his dad's a Somerville guy. Tommy played at Malden Catholic. Just a kid that bled brown and blue, was there through the thick and the thin of it. Was a junior captain in 2014, and really I think was a catalyst for the standards and expectations we had within our program, and really owe a lot of it to him. And the first thing he'll say is he owes it to his teammates, because they believed in him and promoted him. So that's, as cool as the wins are nowadays, there's nothing that comes close to that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're, like you said, you're building a culture. These are life lessons. Like, these are things that life is hard and life sucks, and it deals you curveballs, and, to be able to overcome it, whether individually or with somebody or with a group of people or with family and love. I mean, all of that stuff correlates. They're so parallel to each other. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, sometimes everybody talks about the rise, but in order to know the rise, there was a fall at some point. And and for you to rise through that and build this program, I mean, statistically, just here over the last 5 years, you're 29-14. Again, I could be wrong looking some of these numbers up. So if I am a little inaccurate, I apologize. But, you from 2015 to 2018, you had 4 consecutive winning seasons for the first time since 1988. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And, it changing a culture is not easy. I mean, you're talking about it, but from that degree, that's really difficult, and to get kids to buy into it. And I think at that moment of burying that, when you were saying that, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Like, that gets you over the hump and gets you to the next part of your, of your program and building that. And, you could maybe look back at it and say that maybe that's when the change did happen, when you did something like that in order to make the program take that step forward that it needed to.
Yeah. Ironically, we're getting a new field. And when the guys heard that we were getting a new field, like, all the guys from that class were like, Coach, what about the rock? Right. So it's sitting there. We're going to have some sort of ceremonial reburying. I'm like, I'm not touching the thing. So that, like, hopefully we didn't, wake up the bad demons again. But it's, so
the grass is gone. The grass field is gone. Wow.
One of the last grass fields. We got a great turf coming in, and excited to be able to have some a new surface. You know, it's great. I mean, I'm a traditionalist. I love the grass, but yeah, the Tufts Oval at Zimmern Field is no longer grass. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I know.
I used to work out there all the time as a kid. I lived like 5, 10 minutes down the road from there, and I run
Yeah,
that track and run on that field all the time. All the
yeah.
time.
Well, you got to come back and do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to get back into shape. Absolutely. So, talking at Tufts, and obviously systematically, we'll jump into some of the X's and O's a little bit. I mean, you're an O-line guy. I mean, offensively, what do you guys like? Defensively, what do you like schematically? And yeah, just talk a little bit about who you are identity-wise on the field.
Yeah, I mean, across the board, physicality is an important component to who we are and what we do, right? I mean, I think I think people shy away from saying football's a violent game, but it is, right? I mean, there's a reason we wear helmets and shoulder pads, and it's not just to protect the pretty faces. So it's I think some of football, as you know, is all about space now. Um, but I think that there is a core belief in our program and in mindset where we want to run the ball and we want to stop the run, right? I mean, those are the two core principles of what we do. We want to play great defense and give the ball back to the offense as often as possible. And offensively, we don't want to turn the ball over. And I think probably one of the more underappreciated aspects of the game is in the special teams world. I think more games are won or lost there aside from turnovers, and in that phase in particular, one if you're a program that spends the time doing it. So, it's obviously a great place to get maybe guys that don't get on the field as much involved, but also I think it's a great way to show your value of all phases of those games by allowing some of your best players to be in those moments. So but offensively for us, it always dictates around the quarterback. We've had running quarterbacks, we've had throwing quarterbacks, we've had dual guys. There are elements of spread to us. I think you're starting to see a change back to a little bit of power football.
Yeah.
With teams playing kind of with that H sifter kind of guy in the backfield a little bit.
That can catch too, so your
Yeah.
play action games is pretty good out of it too,
Yeah. So, you can get a little bit of the power run game going and obviously zone. And defensively for us, it becomes, I think if you can have a 4-man front and play a 4-2 box, then great. The reality of that outside linebacker guy for a lot of us, like the field guys, are more safeties now than they are linebackers.
Right.
I think the interesting thing is for us in recruiting, we got really young team coming back this year, but we do have, I think we think a lot of talent at the linebacking level. So, you kind of go back and forth and
Yeah.
again, we want to be able to stop the run. So the minute you get a little lighter by taking a D lineman out and putting a linebacker in, you just got to make sure that guy can set the edge and, can own a gap and, you can still free up the other guys to be able to play in the coverage game. In our league, I don't know, last time you watch a NESCAC game, I mean, it's only gotten better and better. I mean, the margin of error is very, very small. We don't have any buys. We go 9 straight, and it's a grind. And the talent, the other coach in the league, I talk about being surrounded by some really, really great guys. It's an impressive group of coaches, and it's a heck of a league on Saturdays to come and watch. If you've never seen an SCAC game, just pick any of them. You won't be disappointed. So
Yeah, and it's
sometimes,
cool. Yeah,
yeah,
I'll come to the new field. Is the new field going to be ready this year?
that's what they're telling me. That's what they're telling me. So
Okay, so they're
yeah,
cutting it close. They're cutting it
our
close.
first game is September 25th. So
Okay.
they told me it'll be done at least a week before. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
And it's probably, I mean, probably on both sides of the ball too. I mean, we're going to see probably a lot more speed than you're used to seeing when you play at home because, grass makes everything a little bit slower. And
I
so
guess
there's
so.
probably going to be a lot more, speed that you'll see on the field as well.
Yeah, it's funny. We practice on grass and turf during the week, so we're lucky to have that because our guys don't necessarily get dialed into one or the other. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure we got a fast track. So talk about people supporting us. We we were able to go out and get the best product we could get, and I'm really, really excited about that. So
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
great.
it's gonna
And
look fast. I can tell you that much.
and you talked about special teams, and in December I had on David Cole, he's the associate head coach at Mercer, but he was also the special teams when he was at Lenoir-Rhyne, and they led
Yeah.
all Division II in special teams. I mean, you mentioned it as a defensive coordinator. I remember when I told the head coach, I'm like, I want kickoff and I want punt. Like, I want those special teams because they're defensive special teams and they're important and they can change a game in so many ways. A crappy punt, a crappy snap over the punter's head is field position. Being able to pin somebody in a corner, it's great when you practice it and you shift, and teams won't even rush you because they're like, what are they doing? They're shifting into a spread punt. Like, it was just fun, and kickoff can change games and cause turnovers and change field position. So, I mean, at the college level, are you practicing special teams a lot? I mean, is it in your schedule pretty much on a daily basis?
Yeah, I probably overemphasize it, to be honest with you, but it's I mean, on average, I think it's somewhere between 35 and 40 snaps in a game. That's a lot, right? And I think when you think about it, the amount of variables that exist in special teams is pretty significant. And to your point about kickoff, like I've always been on offense, and I never really appreciated gap responsibility and gap control. And, all of a sudden, like, I understood why all these kickoff guys were always emphasizing lane integrity and, not creating more seams. And, that you learn that pretty quick, hopefully not the hard way, but, yeah, it's an area that I think, we spend a lot of time in because I've seen it. Because during that time when we weren't winning, the things that was keeping us in games was our special teams play, because we could hang there. I mean,
Yeah.
that at least was a place that we had some confidence in. But I will say, as much time as we spent on special teams, like, in one game we were going to win, and a team took 2 interceptions back, 199 yards and 100 yards. There was no punt team that was going to fix that. So,
Right.
I think you got to be realistic about it.
Yeah.
You know, uh, Stick to the fundamentals on offensive defense, worry about scheme there. But I think, to your point earlier about keep it simple, and allow your kids to have confidence in what they're doing. I don't think you need to have crazy schemes. That there's certainly at the higher levels, I think the need for it, just because the ability to scout and to be able to have tendencies.
Yeah.
But at the high school level, or lower college level, I think it comes down to execution, as it probably doesn't even at the highest levels. But I think giving your kids a place where they can just line up and pin their ears back and go do their job. I believe that's a byproduct on our end, because that we do well with it, because we do emphasize it as much as we do. It's incredibly important to me, and certainly, as I mentioned earlier, integral part in what we do football wise.
Yeah, and I love hearing that because I was like the special teams like psycho on our staff, and I'd be all over kids like on like punt, trying to punt, pin them within the 10, and like where are you? Where's the ball? Where's the ball? Where's the ball? Like running down the field, and like I was nuts. But in games, there are games I could go back to and being like, yeah, punt team really pinned teams and got us good field position when we got them 3-and-out on the other end, and now we got the ball at like their 45 or 40-yard line, like, and we're 4-down territory unless we do terrible in that first series. So yeah, I was known as the staff psycho for sure when it came to special teams. And obviously coaching at Tufts, it's a great academic school. So, you're not only, like you mentioned it earlier with your teams, like, you had kids that were doing well in the classroom and succeeding outside the program. And so it's a tough school to get not only kids who academically can handle it, but also can handle playing Division III football. So as far as recruiting goes, I mean, how do you guys divvy it up? I mean, how far are you really looking out realistically in the country? Are you looking more in New England? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you go about recruiting classes?
Yeah, I think, luckily at Tufts, we're a national recognition. We have 27 states represented on in our program. We have an admissions department that I think we have great relationships with, and appreciate the opportunity that not just football, but all of our sports get to, reach out to, and maybe get into some regions that you might not, typically get a kid. I think one of the cool things about Tufts is, we are a major research university, even though we have a liberal arts component to us. Our STEM-based, research and learning component to our university is top notch. It's one of the
Yeah.
best in the world, right? So, if you want to be an engineer, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a dentist, you want to be a vet, you want to be a computer scientist, a mechanical engineer, a chemical, the list goes on and on. While at the same time, you want to be a lawyer and be a history major, awesome. We also have the Fletcher School of International Law and Diplomacy, which is one of the top IR programs in the world. Like, the former dean was a 4-star admiral, ran the UN, right? So, like,
Yeah.
I think we offer a wide range of academic interests, and we really try to lead with that. I specifically in the recruiting process set the tone early and look, if you got to love football if you want to play for us, right? It needs to be important to you, but that same competitiveness and that same passion you need to have in the classroom, right? This is not a place where you can just show up and punch in. Like, I wouldn't have survived at Tufts. Like, it's a place where you're going to be supported. It's not like they're going to let you fail, but it's also not like you can just
Right, coast. Right.
Like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. So I think I've just learned to make sure that we're just really upfront about that. That's kind of go the other way. Some people might negatively recruit against us with that. Like, hey, it's a really tough place. You're going to have to really go to school. And ultimately, if a kid doesn't want that, then that's okay. Because that's also, you don't want to bring a kid into an environment that they're not going to be able to thrive in,
Right.
I think it's okay every once in a while to take some risks and I've seen kids, some of our best players, one of our best players ever, a kid from Haverhill, certainly had not figured it out academically yet, and that kid ended up being a 2-time offensive player of the year in the league, and made the dean's list the last 4 semesters of his college career, and was one of 12 seniors to win an award at graduation. And that, in my opinion, is one of the coolest things that I've experienced at Tufts. Seeing someone embrace that environment, challenge themselves a little bit, and it was some slugging early on,
Yeah.
but it was this time where, like, football kept him motivated, but then also he was surrounded by people that were doing well, and he didn't like not doing well, right? And I think Tufts is in a place that can embrace people like that too, that can really tap into their potential, and like I tell him someday, I can't wait to work for him. So he's,
That's awesome. No, and I
yeah.
think it's obviously, it's again, like, character building type program. It seems that's the type of guy you are. Like, check in, check out. When you're there, you're working hard, and that's what Tufts is. I mean, that's exactly what it is. I have friends that have gone there and played basketball there, and it's a tough schedule. It's a tough classes. It's a very good school, and you go anywhere on a job and you flash your Tufts diploma, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get the job.
Well, I always thought it was an indicator too. Like, when we were losing all those games, like, we couldn't win a rocks, paper, scissors, shoot tournament, and like, there was still a ton of dudes knocking on the door, being like, "Hey, I want to come look at Tufts," and like,
yeah,
well, we haven't won, right? And they're like, "Yeah, it's cool." Like, so that was a really good indicator, I think, of, again, when you talk about infrastructure from a university, there's, like, that's an important component. I mean, 8 miles from downtown Boston,
yeah.
you draw a 20-mile radius around Tufts, there's 44-year institutions. There's 500,000 college-age kids between Tufts and, I don't know, Fenway Park, Northeastern, right?
Right, now you got the green line coming in, so now it's
Yeah.
even more.
So that access part is a significant part of it. And again, I could rattle off all of the other accolades that Tufts has, but and what's better than Medford, right? So a little shout out to your hometown.
Listen, I'll take that. I'll take that.
Home of Bob's, right? Were you a Bob's guy? Is that your?
I'd say Bob's, Lacoste's. I was kind of right in the middle. I was on
okay.
Harvard Street, so I was kind of like, I think Lacoste is probably a little closer, but yeah, we go back and forth. You couldn't go wrong either way. So, so obviously, you talk about building a program. We've talked about, the ups and downs of a program and so on and so forth. What do you have coming back this season? What's the squad looking like a little bit? And what's the league looking like?
Yeah. I mean, I think, honestly, that's the question everybody's asking each other, right? I think there's a lot of talent out there. I think within the league, Williams returns a lot of their seniors. Their quarterback is fantastic. Duxbury kid. Last name is Mamron. He's a kid that people should keep an eye out for. Unbelievable competitor, super bright kid, really, really talented person. They're bringing back a ton of seniors. They've got some good local kids I think Middlebury, they were the first team to go 9-0 last year. They return a ton of, and I mean fifth year seniors. So they got guys that took a semester off and are coming back, which I think is going to be a significant impact, because other than that, I mean, you got a lot of kids that haven't played a ton of football out there. I get almost 60 kids that have never been in a locker room. I get 30 incoming, I get essentially two freshman classes. Those sophomores, what they experienced last year.
It's not a season. Yeah.
I mean, we were lucky. We had a little bit of a spring, but the fall was, so, but I'm excited. I think we got a lot of talent. I think the staff's done an unbelievable job recruiting. I think, we're really looking forward to what we have. I think we should have a good solid footing on offense with skill wise. Defensively, I know we got a ton of kids that can tackle. We just got to make sure we can find some guys that can get them lined up. As I mean, you gotta have a great lockdown corner, because everybody in the league's at least got one guy. And
got one guy, absolutely.
Most of us now in this league have more than one guy, and you got to cover a slot and a single receiver. And I'm glad I'm on offense. I'm not gonna lie, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, especially with and even when I schemed defensively in high school, was that old age decision. I guess you see the Patriots do it a lot. It's like, do you put your lockdown guy in your number 2, and then you double their number 1, and now you've taken their best 2 guys out. I mean, that's like the old age question. I used to flirt with that a lot, and sometimes I gambled correctly and sometimes I gambled incorrectly doing it. So defensive side of the ball, I give them a shout out, man. I'm a defensive guy, and sometimes these sets and the speed and the plays and the quickness, it's you can't simulate in practice either, so, and at least at the high school level you can't, and you may not even have enough guys to play scout defense on the other side. So you see teams come out that first series and they're just so much faster, and you're like, all right, we're there, guys. We're missing by a few steps. We just got to adjust the speed and we'll be okay, So, shout out to defense there. I agree. So the last question I really like to ask a lot of coaches, and you've been around coaching and you're a dedicated guy and building a program, and obviously coaches have their up and down. It's balance and family with coaching. I think, you're a dad of young kids, as am I. So I understand that, at the end of the day, you bring things home with you that you have to kind of learn to let go at the door, because you have kids and a wife that are waiting for you, that have been waiting to talk to you all day and see you all day. And, you got to be able to balance both. So how do you do that, especially at the college level?
Yeah, it's it's hard, right? It's one of the reasons that I chose to go to Division III and not say Division I level. And this isn't a knock on any of those guys at the D1 level. I mean, everybody's got their passions and reasons for why they want to do it. But I often thought about when I was GA, and at the end of a week, I probably saw the full-time guys' families more than they did. Whether they were on the road recruiting, and I had to go mow a lawn, or
Right.
I think one time I had to build like a outdoor playhouse, I mean, which really was a shed, but we won't leave it at that.
Yeah.
I was lucky to be on a staff with Coach. Family was important to him. His kids were around. Everybody's kids were around, so that was great. But for me, it's important to me that I'm in my daughter's lives. So I get 2 elementary school kids, and I bring them to school every morning. So. I think actually, COVID obviously, I think has made all of us kind of emphasize some of those things that are really important to us. But I think at the same time, it's also made us think a little bit differently about how we work. In our line of work, for some reason, there's always been this, we have a staff meeting at 7 a.m. You go through the day with football practices, meetings at 3, practices at 4, you're off the field at 6:30. You call your family, you kiss them goodnight, you do a FaceTime. And then you're making recruiting calls, and then you're watching film, and then, you
just nonstop. It's nonstop.
15, 16 hours later, and then you do it again the next day for us, 12 straight weeks, So, I think you just need to be intentional about what you want. And you got to surround yourself with guys that are equally as focused that way. Right. Because for some guys, they might get frustrated by that. If you have a staff where half the guys are dads and, the other half are just young guys, and those young guys are going to get frustrated that you're going to do a staff meeting at 10 rather than 7 in the morning. Some of those things I think can be problematic, but it's important to me that the fathers and husbands or whatever, partners that are in our staff have that other aspect of their life and appreciate it. Division three, you're probably not going to be able to pay guys nearly the same amount of money that all the other levels do, particularly when you live in Boston.
Yeah.
But I think you can always give value back to those guys in giving them some freedom in their lives. Um, not that in season we work any more or any less than anybody else, but there are some elements and aspects, in particular within the NESCAC, that I think, if it's important to you, it's a great place to be able to be and coach. But it's hard, and your part about taking things home. I think that's probably one of the areas that I try to focus on as much as I can. That ride home, listen to a guy talk. I don't know if you ever, the Above the Line group, Urban Meyer wrote a book called Above the Line. There's a group, the Focus 3. Their whole mantra is E plus R equals O. So the event plus the response equals the outcome. And their belief is, you really have no control over the events that come your way. And ultimately, you don't have a final say on the outcome to that event. But what you can do is you can control your response to things, right? And trying to figure out what your triggers are that make you respond below the line, right? And at the same time, what structures and disciplines you can build within yourself to make sure that you respond to things above the line, right? So, and you spend all this time thinking about, I'm just studying these guys and going to their seminars and thinking how this applies to football. And then one day, one of the seminars, the guy said, "Well, this applies to you the minute you pull the car into the driveway and you walk into the house upset that you lost a recruit and that your safety can't get the defense lined up and blah blah, all the things that were in your way." And realize that event of coming home is just as important as the event, like what are you going to do on 4th and 1, on the plus 40, so I think a lot of us probably have a lot more of the skill set than we believe. It's just taking a step back to realize how can we apply it a little bit better in other aspects of our life, but that easier said than done. If I brought my wife down on this, she'd tell you I'm terrible at responding. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, my wife took the selective hearing and everything else when I used to come home. And it's hard, you really try to let it go at the door, and it's not easier said than done. Like, I used to come home from Tuesday practice and being like, we're terrible, because you're just implementing the game plan and like you make so many mistakes at practice and you're like, oh my God, so I totally get it. So I want to thank you for coming on here. We're going to jump into our last segment of the show. It's called the 2-minute drill. So it's kind of like a rapid fire, quick 1 or 2 word answer questions. My coaches love it. It's their favorite segment of the show. And it's meant to be a lot of fun. So I'm just going to fire some rapid fire questions at you and just give me 1 or 2 word answers. I do get a challenge if I want to hear you explain something a little bit more and vice versa. If you want to explain something, go for it. All right. Okay. All right. So I'll start my timer here and here we go. 4th and 3 from the 3-yard line, or 4th and goal from the 3-yard line. What are you running?
Play action pass, back in the flat, corner route all day.
Okay. Defensively, if there was one coverage you could ideally line up in the entire game, what would it be?
I mean, we got to play man free. If I can pick one, and we can be, my defense coordinator is going to kill me if he hears this. So he's man free. Let's go.
A big zero guy. I was a big zero guy back in the day. Awesome. I love that. Week 4 NFL Patriots, Belichick versus Brady. Who's winning the game?
What's the weather? When is it?
I think they're playing week 4, so it's probably end of September, beginning of October. Ooh. So it's probably like 75.
I'm a diehard Pats fan. My father used to work the Pats games when I was a kid. He was a spotter for NBC. So I actually have dirt in my office from Sullivan Stadium, from Foxborough Stadium. So I'm never going against the Pats.
That is a diehard fan right there. Yeah. I mean, you can say that. That's awesome. Very cool. What song still gets you juiced up before a game? Maybe you hear it, or you got to listen to it to kind of get you pumped up.
I mean, any Rage Against the Machines, or gosh, a little Danzig, a little Metallica. I was a little different back then. So,
what team in conference is the toughest road game to go play in?
Ooh, the Williams game's a tough ride for us because it's 3.5 hours out there, and it's the day of. That's a pretty tough place to play, and I'm always gonna give a shout out to Trinity down in the Coop. Hard hitting Hartford. That's not a lot of people get to roll into a place like that. So.
All right, Coach. And last question: would you rather win a game like 3-0, or would you rather win a game in a shootout?
I just want to win. So wins a win.
Wins a win. I got
Wins a
it.
win. When you lost as many as we did, take however you get them.
All right, coach, you survived the 2-minute drill. And,
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for coming on here. It was an honor to have you on here. It was a great talk. I mean, I really enjoyed myself. I felt like I've known you. Like, it was just a real fun time. So I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it a lot. You guys do an awesome job, and I know you've done a ton in your hometown too. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and love what you're doing, and excited to see where this thing goes. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, guys, until next time, Civetti, Tufts University. I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Be well.